Hey, Midnight Musings. Just got some thoughts I wanted to share. I make a lot of videos talking about spirituality and healing and transforming and how to help oneself and help one's world. But don't get it twisted. I was raised on pop culture, right? Because of more and more my willingness to understand consciousness, what I am, what we all are together, helps me more and more to understand how, as consciousness, as sensitive and spiritual beings with the human body, living a human life, with all these aspects of our mirror neurons and tribalness and love and what we need to in order to grow up and survive. Now my understanding more and more is understanding we become our environment, right? Now each individual will do that differently. Like we are the most advanced, complex, super manifestation computers imaginable, because we are that aspect to expand imaginings. So it's unimaginable to imagine and understand what we are, because we are constantly expanding and creating upon that. That's why if you allow yourself to understand your influences in your life, you will understand yourself more. For example, for myself, such huge influences for me are the hip hop energy, right? Hip hop artists, since the late 80s, especially throughout the 90s, because that's when my most impressionable time, from like mid-teens, like 15, 16 to, into my 20s, right? Hip hop was really started coming into my life, and I developed such a love and passion for it, especially as I allowed plant and consciousness medicine to open up my mind, to heal my mind of all the very limiting and very narrow-minded viewpoints about life from Western society, from a more conservative city and upbringing, from a cultural origin energy that is very limiting for one's ability to perceive and understand who this is, what this is. So, Wu-Tang Clan, right? Like Biggie and Tupac and, Tribe Called Quest, like I remember TLC and Will Smith, even before I like, even in my early teens, was some of the first artists I actually bought their CDs and started just falling in love with. So those are some of my greatest spiritual teachers when I think about it, right? It's like, but as I allowed myself now to then more and more since my 20s seek out other spiritual teachers, right? The more the Western ones that have brought consciousness into the present day, like Eckhart Tolle, Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer and Pema Children, these Caucasians that have in their own way expressed their own truth, which is that freedom of consciousness, that presence, right? So and over time, in all the different aspects of pop culture, right? I've loved pro sports all throughout my 20s. So I was observing each of these, especially the famous players, right? And how they carried themselves, how they went about their business. And over time, I realized I was trying to find good examples for me to emulate and see all the cautionary tales, if you will, of how the hero gets taken down because of the mistruths they've been holding on to in their lives. Some very, very obvious examples these days. I mean, Cosby, but there's so many in the sports world that they've been heroes and that warrior, maybe even that king their whole lives, but they have these shadows and these skeletons in the closet that come in that sometimes just tramples or really just takes them down from the glory, because we are not allowed in the structures of control and influence to realize and understand all that we are, which is both the light and the darkness, right? So if one is not able to accept and embrace one's demons, then those will just hide in the unconscious, and eventually they will rise and you complete the cycle, right? Because it's all cyclical, the light and the dark within each, and that's in this world and around us. So I guess for me, more and more, spirituality is just understanding what I am, what I chose, what I want to express and create, and allowing myself the freedom, the recognition of my freedom to just choose to start doing that, right? Like, for me, like amazing actors like, Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise, Mel Gibson, these are some of my favorite people that I watched throughout my upbringing, right? Stallone, Schwarzenegger, like Jim Carrey, Robin Williams, right? George Carlin, like all of these souls and energies was teachers for me, because in my own life, I certainly didn't have, like, my father wasn't around most of my upbringing. My mom was severely depressed, so she was no example of how to be emotionally healthy. And if you're not emotionally healthy, that affects all areas of your life, no matter how much success you're experiencing in any other aspect or realm of life. If you're not emotionally well or mentally well, then you hide that suffering, you try to pretend, and that's so painful. So I had to seek out and start isolating myself, because not just in my immediate family environment, but in the environment in general, I personally now realize I didn't find any good examples of people really being able to feel that love, right? Maybe it's the city I come from, maybe it's just the circles I ran in, maybe it's just the people I encountered, maybe I was just drawing in what was in me, and most of my life all I had in me was just this desperation, this need to conform and fit in and be validated and accepted from outside of myself. So therefore I was creating that in my reality and drawing through into all those people that wasn't able to give me the example of what humans are capable of, which is that sense of great love and freedom and joy and compassion and kindness and boldness and charisma and action. So I started spending more time through pop culture, through media, looking for energies that I can emulate, that I can take in. So what are you taking in? I mean, especially if you're a millennial and grew up with the rise of the digital age and all these forms of media and expression and storytelling, that are simply reflecting all that we are, all that was within each amazing human. So, think about what inspires you, who inspires you, what moves you, right? Who you love, right? And what does that reflect about you, about what you want to experience, about who you are, right? And then maybe it's that willingness to experience other people and try out their energies and their expressions and what they have to offer and take that on. I mean, especially being a sensitive human being, and I believe all human beings are, on the scale of empathicness, from the narcissist, which goes into maybe the inverse of the shadow sides, however you think of it, to the completely sensitive and empathic, right? So, but we're all different. So understand how you are sensitive and how you are influenced and have been influenced throughout your life by the energies and your environment, and realize that you have a choice to create new environments, to allow yourself to experience other environments and start mirroring and being influenced and inspired by environments, by universes, by others, by energies, thoughts, ideas that you want to be a bigger part of what you are experiencing, who you are, and you have a choice to free yourself, because you are always free to choose. So just some random musings late at night.